And the International Sports Film Festival 2025, the 8th edition, coming to you live from Cinemax Nyali here in Mombasa, Kenya, East Africa. Now we've got movies, we've got panels, we've got special sessions, we've got demonstrations, we've got so many things happening over these next few days. And this is just day 2 of the Kenya International Sports Film Festival. Now, we're going to go into a very somewhat sensitive, delicate panel, but it's something we must discuss, and this of course is about the growth of arbitration and mediation in the world of sports. And I'm very honored and privileged to say that on this particular panel, we actually have the chairman of Safinez Foundation and the founder and festival director of the Kenya International Sportsman Festival, Mr. Aasif Karim. Of course, you also know him as a world-class cricketer, and he is going to be on this panel, and I'm going to hand over to him so that he can take it over from here, because he's the person who knows the best about this, which is actually what we refer to as alternative justice resolution. There you go, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Once again, a pleasure to be here on day 2 for what is an important subject, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the chairman of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators Kenya, and who will be the moderator, and a personal friend of mine, Dr. Ken Mutuma. May I hand over to the moderator to take it from here in what is a very growing subject, and the public will enjoy listening to this new subject that is up and growing. Over to you, sir.
Person that I know to be a practitioner in this area, a sportsman across 2 national courts. I think he played cricket and tennis. I'm yet to come across someone like that from any other jurisdiction. And of course, a very special member in the what we call the alternative dispute resolution family of practitioners. I am joined by a very special panel that will be helping me discuss this context of ADR, and specifically arbitration and mediation in the context of sports, looking at the present, where we are, and looking into the future, where we could be going or where we could. And that is none other, of course, than first and foremost, Bernard Murunga. Everyone will know Bernard in so many contexts, but he has served for a very long time in the Sports Dispute Tribunal. He is currently the chairperson of that tribunal. He's been very much involved in matters of football, both as a qualified FIFA referee, as the chair of the FKF Arbitration Tribunal, and as the chair of the FKF Disciplinary Committee. This, amongst many other portfolios that he has, makes him a very credible voice when it comes to the topic at hand. We're also joined by a wonderful favorite of ours, all the way from Nigeria. That's Chiamaka Anagu. Chiamaka Anagu is an arbitrator, a certified mediator, and a legal practitioner, so she will bring the lens of law into this arena of sports disputes. She's done a lot of pro bono work, and currently serves as a member of the Sports Resolutions Pro Bono Legal Service. I think the beautiful thing about sports is the way it unifies people across borders, and we will be getting some insight all the way from the west, some best practices that we could borrow from within this jurisdiction. And then last but not least, and present there in the plenary is the chairman of Safinez Foundation, Aasif Karim, a founder of the very festival that we are enjoying, an international sportsman. You heard me mention his duality across the tennis and cricket courts. And he's, in a very special way, the executive producer of the Karim's Sporting Dynasty, and also the rest of the world documentaries. So it's a real big pleasure to have you, distinguished panelists. Let's set the ground going. We've got a very short time. I think doing a dive into the subject, sports disputes. What's the nature of these sports disputes? How do they come about? And how are they unique from other disputes that you experience? I'm sure, Chiamaka, you would have something to say about that, being a lawyer and in the terrain of dispute resolution. So what is really unique about sports disputes? Welcome.
Okay, so I'll start by saying good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and having me. So I'll just go straight into it. So sports disputes for the general public, just so that we don't use any legal terms that will go over people's head, are issues that come up that are sports related, whether they are contract issues, representation issues, doping issues, regulatory issues, ethical issues in sports. So what happens is that most times sports bodies, they provide their own dispute resolution mechanism in order to help resolve these disputes quickly. Because we know how our regular courts, they deal with a large number of disputes. So if sports disputes go in there, they take a lot of time. So it's easier for the regulatory bodies and to set up their own disputes resolution mechanisms just in a bid to help these things go faster. For example, just also to keep it brief, during the Olympics, there is usually a CAS dispute body that stays on there. So when somebody has any complaint, they deal with it immediately because it's very time sensitive, and just give a decision there and then so that the competitions can go on, whether it goes to qualification, doping issues, any other thing that comes up during competitions. They handle it very quickly, and then the competition goes on. So
Thank you very much. That's a lovely way to get us started. Thank you, Chiamaka. So we hear that they are very unique because of their terrain. You're dealing with doping issues. I think that's highly technical. You're dealing with time-bound. I think the idea of the life of the athlete. And you need a fast dispute resolution mechanism with which all of this can be resolved. Let me bring in the chair of the sports tribunal at this point. Everyone, of course, is trying to understand these two dispute resolution mechanisms, arbitration, mediation. What exactly happens in the context of Chiamaka's earlier comments? How does this mechanism then kick in? What's your experience, your observation from what you see in the world of arbitration and mediation? Welcome. I suspect your sound isn't coming clear. We can see you are speaking, but we are not able to hear you, Bwana Chairman. We now are being. I've always wanted to do a lip reading course. Now we can hear you. Welcome. Oh dear, still not coming through. Okay, while he's testing his mics, I think we'll ask the technical team to help. I think it's a question that hopefully Aasif Karim, he hasn't mentioned, but he's a practitioner in the area of mediation and arbitration. He can tell us what that looks like in the context of sports disputes. Karibu sana, Bwana Karim.
Yes, thank you very much, my chairman. It's wonderful to be on this important subject and also share my views to the distinguished panelists that we have. I want to touch something on what Chiamaka said about the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games, the period where the period is quite limited. And I think the CAS has done a very good job by creating an ad hoc committee to handle disputes that happen during Olympic, because the time frame is very limited on that tournament. It's like a 2-week period. The event has to finish within a very short period. And so that's something that I believe that the Olympic and the Commonwealth Games with the CAS have created a very good structure to create ad hoc where the decisions are made within 24 to 48 hours subject to the dispute that is there. So that's something that is growing in sports arbitration and sports mediation. The other areas that she talked about is already been addressed, and I'm sure the chairman will speak later on. But I strongly would like to advocate that it's time now that Africa also does take some charge in trying to get our disputes resolved within Africa. And you remember, Chairman, we were part of a committee that we organized about 4 years ago, where we had the Court of Arbitration of Sports from Louisiana visit us, very well organized by the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators Kenya, and we had a wonderful one-day seminar where the big boys from CAS had come, where we had engaged to see how we can create a CAS office in Africa. And of course, because we are Kenyans, we were saying, why not Kenya take the lead, as we are also a powerhouse in Africa on the matter. So there are a lot of areas that I feel that dispute resolution in sports can be enhanced, and that would be my beginning statement. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. It's an echo coming from, probably we may need to mute one of the mics. Yes, indeed. The CAS Secretary General, courtesy of Mr. Aasif Karim, was in Nairobi, a very, very successful conference on sports disputes and how to localize them, and probably a very good entry for the chair of the Sports Tribunal to speak about what's happening at a local context, what's happening within the local scene on the resolution of these disputes, and possibly also the kind of challenges that he's seeing when we speak about arbitration, mediation, and how they are functioning both within the country and maybe within the wider scope of Africa. Karibu sana. I hope, Mr. Chairman, you're able to speak now.
I hope you can hear me now.
Excellent. We can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kenneth. There was no dispute that I couldn't be heard, but now you have settled it. In terms of the Sports Disputes Tribunal in Kenya, we are now in the 12th year since the Sports Disputes Tribunal was set up under the Sports Act of 2013. And I can say that, if you look at the architecture of our Sports Disputes Tribunal, is such that the resolution of disputes is actually titled under Part 7 of the Sports Act, Arbitration of Disputes. So the word arbitration is actually used in terms of how the disputes are actually resolved. However, most of the matters that are litigated before the tribunal are more litigation. It's not really what I'll call the active arbitration. However, if you look at Section 59 of the Sports Act, it then encourages the tribunal in resolving the matters to then try arbitration and mediation. And what has been happening is that when matters are brought before the tribunal, the chairperson and other members of the tribunal will then ask the parties whether they would actually be willing to go the arbitration way and also mediation. And we have persons who are qualified in arbitration. I should mention, Chair, that I'm an associate member of the Chartered Institute, so and you are my chair, basically. So in terms of arbitration, we then look for mediators and also arbitrators and then see whether those matters can be resolved. And we give them the facilities of the tribunal to even use, because we have the Microsoft Teams link that is set up by the judiciary. We are then able to use those facilities to even do the mediation. And basically that has actually worked well. We have matters that come before the tribunal, and parties will even raise objections on whether the tribunal has jurisdiction to hear those matters, because those contracts might be having arbitration clauses. And we keep that in mind so that when the matters are brought before the tribunal, we don't just dive in and immediately start handling the matters, but try and see the arbitration, whether it can work. But as Chiamaka also mentioned, some of the sports matters are also time bound. And so where there is actually urgency, I mean, there are matters that come on a Friday evening and somebody wants to stop a match that is being played on Saturday, and you need to actually get the parties to come before you and try and see whether you can get some compromise. That is also something that we try. So in terms of dispute resolution, we are able to not just insist on, a way in which the parties have to start now litigating before the tribunal, but also try the arbitration mediation route.
And I have been a user of your services as a tribunal. I can attest, as Mr. Aasif Karim will know, that we did have a matter where just before a very, very important happening, you get hit by a suit, and the tribunal has to work overnight to make sure that there is not incredible disruptions that would affect the play of sport essentially. I'm glad to hear, Chairman, that you're one of our members. Certainly one of the outcomes of this is we foresee a round table, and we foresee, I think we've been having discussions with Aasif Karim on how we can build capacity in this specific area. Which takes me to Chiamaka, questions around practitioners. So I'm hearing that there is references to arbitration clauses in a lot of these contracts. I'm also hearing from the Sports Tribunal Chairman that certain matters are referred, parties are asked to consider mediation. Do we have a sufficient number of practitioners who are, have got the necessary expertise and skill to conduct these arbitrations and mediations? What's your experience in Nigeria?
Okay, so thank you very much for that. For your question, I would say yes and no, right? Because we have a good number of people that are qualified arbitrators, certified mediators, but not in sports, not versed in sports. And you know that for sports, arbitration and mediation is quite technical because you need to know the rules and regulations. And you know, sports is a very heavily regulated sector. So there's need for capacity building and training ongoing, really. And then also, why I'll say both yes and no is because right now, like from what Aasif said, we don't have much going on in the arbitration and mediation space in sports in Africa. And then people want to train and do the work and not just train for training's sake and just, keep on waiting for international jobs or when they got called to practice in Switzerland or, somewhere else. We want to have these things happening in Africa. We already have the sports happening here. So why can't the disputes be settled in here? So the thing is, the reason I feel why there might not be as much practitioners as we would like is because nothing much is happening there at the moment. By the time it picks up and people know, okay, these disputes can be resolved in Africa, more people will come into this space. So I don't think we're lacking people at all. The training doesn't take such a long time. So that's my take on that, yeah.
Which takes us a full circle to what you had earlier said, Aasif, that we need to seriously start considering how to localize the disputes in this continent, this specific part of the world, if the program of capacity building is going to make sense. Any thoughts on how we can do that? Quick wins?
Yes, Chair. I think I would break that down into two folds. One, that there should be a capacity building for all the associations that we have in every country. So, for example, you have the football body or the cricket body or the hockey body. The administrators also need to be educated. they also need to be guided on how to handle disputes. Most of the people that come to the sports tribunal are really coming with almost zero knowledge. And that, I think that capacity needs to be built, because there will be many issues that can be resolved without even coming to the tribunal if the capacity building is done to the committee that is organizing. Not only to that, even to the sports people that are playing, so the footballers or the hockey players. So this needs to be a continuous training that needs to take place. Secondly, in terms of how we can build capacity for the mediators or the arbitrators, like we were very fortunate that John Ohaga, who's a former national rugby player, was the chairman for 10 years when the sports tribunal got incepted. We had also Jerry Onyango, who's also played various sports and involved in sports administration. So people who are knowledgeable on dispute resolution and having played sports gives an added advantage to make the things easier, because they understand the psyche, the situation on the ground, on what is happening. So those are the two areas that I believe should be advocated very strongly, and there should be a budget created by the sports tribunal, by the National Olympic Committee, and by all the federations, because that's an area that we are spending a lot of time, and a lot of unnecessary time is wasted. And remember, a sportsman's life is a shelf life. If he loses that period of under disputes, he misses out on a longer period. So it's something that needs to be really stepped up to another level. Thank you.
That level, if the terrain remains as it is, where we're losing out. And then secondly, of course, these three areas that Aasif Karim proposes, particularly the question of budget constraints and availability of sports athletes to step into the arena post their franchise. How exactly we can get more Anagus, more John Ohagas, more Aasif Karims, now, as it were, almost graduating to the other side of it. The sportsmen do this very well when it comes to moving from the pitch to the coaching bench, to the commentator bench. Can we probably see this happening in ADR and dispute resolution? Karibu sana.
Thank you. First of all, in terms of the expertise that is required under the Sports Act for persons to be appointed as members of the Sports Disputes Tribunal, it is set out under our section 55 that establishes the tribunal. And there are minimum standards that are expected, that must be somebody who has experience in legal matters and relating to sports, which is important because of what Chiamaka said, that you can actually have arbitrators who are then not specialized in sports. So there is actually a requirement that you must have experience in sports matters in any capacity for at least 10 years. So there's actually a flow of 10 years that you must actually have met so that you then are appointed. And that is why even when the Judicial Service Commission is appointing members, those are some of the things that they look into. They look into what capacity have you been involved in. And when they talk about capacity, it's not just about playing. So there's actually a mix because we can't have the Sports Disputes Tribunal full of former national players of either the rugby team or whatever. I have, for instance, in my case, I have been involved as a Deputy Secretary General of one of the leading clubs in the country, one of the Premier League teams in football. And those are some of the things that they look into. They look into the qualifications that people have. And because governance is really one of the serious issues that is being dealt with, they also look even into what are the qualifications that you have in matters governance. So persons who are governance auditors, persons who have restructuring experience in organizations will actually also have an advantage to that. But I also do appreciate that the shelf life of athletes is actually quite short. And one of the things that we are doing is to actually do an outreach so that the athletes are not also disadvantaged when they come to the tribunal, because sometimes when the athletes are coming before the tribunal, they might be meeting the associations who might be having the capacity to have legal representation. And we are also now doing that education to the athletes. In fact, I think on November 7th, I'm expected to have some discussions with the Kenya Football Welfare Association, for instance, that deals with the athletes themselves, the footballers, and other sports organizations, of course, are also welcome to have these sort of discussions, that then we can see how we partner. But also in terms of the associations, one of the gaps that we have realized is that what we call the internal dispute resolution mechanism sometimes doesn't work very well, because either it is not independent, or there are people who are not impartial because they're being paid by the same association. And what we are trying to do is to encourage them to actually have proper IDRM, internal dispute resolution mechanisms, so that when the decisions they give, they have good reasons. You can actually, previously I used to see decisions that come from the internal dispute resolution mechanisms that are one line, that just says appeal dismissed. And we are trying to encourage people to give reasons why that appeal has not been allowed. And we are doing sensitization of federations so that we, as I kept saying, we don't want to interfere with matters that can actually be resolved at that level. So if the federations themselves get to have more people, get to have arbitrators, for instance, appointed into those committees, then it will actually be, it will serve the sports industry very well. Then you don't have to insist on hearing matters, because you will have some cogent reasons that have been given, and the people who actually would want to even appeal to the tribunal might actually not need to do that when they see the reasoning that that is involved. So the outreach programs are ongoing. We are speaking to all categories. In Kenya, the athletes, the federations are classified as court users, and every tribunal and court in Kenya must have a court users committee. So what we are actually doing even at the moment is to ensure that the court users committee works, so that we are also getting feedback from the court users on what needs to be done administratively, and then we also then share this feedback, including even the feedback that we can get from this particular engagement.
You can count on us, Chair. In all the outreach, please reach out to the Chartered Institute. We will support. You are our member. Aasif, Karim is our member. Both our members, and also in terms of time and resources, we'll be very happy to support. Parting shot, we have 3 minutes to time. Looking into the future, what do you see in terms of potential in this area? We can start with the Chiamaka. 1 minute parting shot, 30 seconds. What do you see?
Wow, time has gone off so fast. Okay, so parting shots. What I would like to see is, like Murunga has said, for this capacity building to be done for sports persons, for administrators. I want to see proper, if we can have, like Aasif said as well, if we can have a CAS for Africa, so that we resolve our disputes by ourselves. I want to see a system that actually works. If it's arbitration, it's proper arbitration. If it's mediation, it's proper mediation. It's not just a setup, just, so let's have something that FIFA says we should have, or something that BAT says we should have. But this is proper, where sports persons can believe that their disputes will be heard and resolved. That's what I would like to see.
Where people can see, believe that their disputes are actually being heard. Aasif, that's a challenge from you. You've been a sportsman for a very long time. That's a challenge to you. If you were given the life expectancy of 120 years and you got to see 2050, what would you want to be looking at in this region? What would you wake up to and say, we got it?
Well, of course, as I said earlier, that I'm very keen that we empower ourselves in Africa. I think we are ripe enough now as a powerhouse globally in sports, that we can handle any form of disputes. And that's why I want to put the challenge back to you, both the chairmen on this panel, Dr. Mutuma and Bernard, to take the matter to another level with CAS, because it's very, very important, and I strongly believe that we already have some capacity that we can manage the disputes at this level. And so when I wake up, or when I'm there up to 2050, as you said, right, up to 2050, we will have hundreds and hundreds of sports mediators and sports arbitrators. My final point, which maybe the chair of Sports Tribunal can maybe add this, is when the Sports Tribunal makes a decision and the parties are not happy, they normally go to the High Court to appeal. I just wanted to know whether the structure of that is correct, or is the athlete allowed to go to CAS directly? And thank you once again for me being part of this wonderful panel. So once again, we want to thank all the panelists. We want to thank Dr. Mutuma, Chiamaka, and our new Sports Tribunal Chairman, Bernard, for a wonderful session that we have had. The program is recorded, will be shared on our social media platforms, and we look forward to growing sports arbitration and sports mediation in Africa. Thank you very much, and continue enjoying the wonderful sports documentaries and the sports movies on day 2, and we've got day 3, and the last day on the 19th being day 4. Good evening.